Um, Thank you for that very generous introduction, but I'd like to add another qualification which I'm most proud of. I am an alumnus of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. And proud to say that I came here in '77 just as the emergency collapsed and was in what was then the most political hostel. It was then a men's hostel called Ganga. And with me, they hated us, and when we left, I think they performed a havan and converted it into a women's hostel in the hope that the girls would be better. So, yeah. Have you been? No, okay, good. I hope not. Yeah, I returned some 25 or 30 years later to serve 5 years on the Executive Council of JNU, but I am much more proud of the period that I was a student and an active member of the JNUSU and president of the Ganga Hostel. The period when I was 5 years on the executive council of this institution, 80% of that time went in battling the administration on one issue, because a group of very powerful people were trying to sabotage the reservations for 27% reservations for OBCs. That for 5 years, what was a Supreme Court judgment, what was an act of Parliament, was resisted, twisted, distorted in order to try and undermine the spirit of that. They did not succeed. Now, about today, you live, but I am also here. I want to say first, I came to Delhi only for this. I had no other. Because, why did I come for you guys? Because you are fighting for something much larger than your own demands. You're fighting for much larger than your own demands. In the immediate processes that are on in this country, if you prioritize them, what you're fighting against will fall in the top 3. By the way, that process has been around in the countryside of India for 2 decades. It has now reached the elite campuses as well. It is the criminalization of dissent. That is what you are fighting. You're fighting the criminalization. This isn't just an infraction or violation of the constitution or law. It is to make criminals of dissidents. That is the process you are fighting. In Odisha, where you'll find this, you live in the period not only of the greatest inequality, but in the period of collapse of restraint on corporate power. In Odisha, in Kalinganagar, an Adivasi couple educated degrees from Utkal University, never been to a police station in their lives, okay? And then they meet the Tatas in Kalinganagar and refuse to give up their land. Between the two of them, they have 91 cases filed against them. 91 cases. In POSCO, in Jagat Singhpur in Odisha, Abhay Sahu, the leader of the anti-POSCO movement, which by the way has won and defeated POSCO, Abhay Sahu, each time I meet him, I ask, so how many? And he updates the number of cases. Last time it was some 56 or 58 cases against him. People in those villages are unable to venture out of the village because they'll be arrested. People have missed their brothers and sisters' weddings because of that, okay? Because they're sort of bunkered down in their immediate villages. Everywhere you look, you take the area, you take the place in the anti-Reliance SEZ battles in Navi Mumbai. How many cases were filed? In Koraput, the cases are against I went to meet one of them in jail, chemistry professor. What they do, a common tactic, this is now, guys, welcome to the rest of India. It's a very common tactic elsewhere. There is a march to the police station to protest something. There is a scuffle. The police then file a case against maybe Kanhaiya and Kumar and 800 others. 800 others. That gives them the leeway to keep raiding the surrounding villages for the next 3 years, harassing people out of their wits because they've not put down names. A, B, C, and 800 others attacked the police station. Okay? Now, one of those guys who was in there was a professor of chemistry whom I went to see in Koraput jail. They couldn't, we couldn't get to meet him, though his lawyer had come, and the charges are simply fantastic. The chemistry professor, amongst his charges, was theft of a buffalo. Now, it is very unlikely that that professor would be able to tell a buffalo from another bovine creature. Okay? But he was arrested under theft of a buffalo, as many of us had fantastic charges against us during the emergency. You had this poor chap is there in there so we were not allowed to interview him, and we weren't able to communicate with the buffalo either, obviously. And all over the country, people are in Srikakulam, again, in the anti-port agitation. There's a 78-year-old woman, now she'll be 80, in this year she'll be 80. She has 23 cases, including attempt to murder a policeman. She's about this much, weighs some 35 kg, and she's supposed to have gone to attempt to murder a posse of 20, 30 policemen who came around. The sheer, as I said, welcome. This is where you have arrived. Okay? But I think, I tell you this, I cannot tell you that it's going to get better tomorrow. No, it isn't. It's going to get a lot worse. It will get better, but it will get a lot worse before it gets better. And how it will get better depends on how all of us handle the lot worse. Okay? And I have enormous faith in the students of JNU that they will stand up and be counted. So today, here I am standing up to be counted amongst you. I am here entirely in solidarity with your struggle, and I know you will not cave in, you will not give in, you will fight and you will win. You are living in this country in its greatest period of inequality. Also accompanied by a rise of fundamentalism. The two are allied in more ways than one. Okay? India, in my understanding, in my view, and I'm willing to argue the case, India is ruled by an alliance of socio-religious fundamentalists in alliance with economic market fundamentalists. The two need each other desperately. They're locked in an embrace. And very often there's a large number of individuals who are both. They are economic market fundamentalists with religious fundamentalist overtones. Please first let me explain that market fundamentalism is as religious a fundamentalism as any other. It too has its own popes and pundits and gospels and Puranas. Okay, it has, and market fundamentalism has more televangelists than any other religion. They're on every night, every channel. The market fundamentalism's gospel, you're JNU students, the gospel of Saint Growth, the gospel of Saint Greed, the gospel of Saint Choice. The market gives you choice. Does it? When you have, in a world, I heard yet another of these clowns arguing his case. Oh yeah, by the way, two of your worthies, market fundamentalists, were on TV along with Thomas Piketty a week, 10 days ago. And they argued that inequality is not such a great issue, and there is nothing that worries them about people flaunting their wealth. Vivek De Bruyne and Arvind Subramaniam, who is a chief economic advisor, said that there is nothing very wrong in. I have no problem with that, said Mr. De Bruyne, who is from the Niti Ayog, or as my friends in Tamil Nadu say, the Niti Ayo. And he said, if people want to flaunt their wealth, that's their business. None of my business. It's their call. It's none of my. And Arvind said, I have to agree with Vivek on that. Of course he did. Yeah, they're both the same. So you have, when we're talking about market fundamentalism, when you're talking about the kind of inequalities that have been brought about, for once I have to agree on the two formations of the UPA and NDA. I rarely agree with my professional colleague or contemporary, if you call it that, Arun Shourie, who put it so correctly when he described the BJP as Congress plus cow. He got that one right. Let's hear it for Arun Shourie. Yeah? The BJP, he said, is Congress plus cow. Now I'm coming from Maharashtra, where we had a beef ban. You've been reading about that. What are the outcomes? What were the ideas? The driving point of that, were the fundamentalist belief in the sacredness of the cow. Now, and that in India it's always been sacred. Cow is very central to a large number of farm economies. There's no doubt about that. And by the way, the ban on cow slaughter and the ban on beef and the ban on, even now extended to bullocks and extended to, in fact, these guys, as Arunachal has shown you, can't tell the difference between a cow and a mithun. But it was a fundamentalist idea. A couple of things that you should know, if you read your census figures, ideologically and religious-wise, 42% of your population has no beef with beef. They have no problem. 42% of your population, apart from the millions of others within the large fold of what you call Hinduism, who also don't have problems with it. Kerala, at this time, you'll be entertained to know, the biggest videos going viral on the net are of BJP leaders eating beef, because everybody in Kerala does. So there are wonderful explanations put out, counter videos put out. Yes, but that is a 3-year-old video. I gave up eating beef. Another says it's not beef, it's roast onion potato. So yeah, these are the videos making the rounds. You got any Malayali students here? Go and fetch them down. These are the BJP leaders of Kerala. Anyway, they banned the thing, thinking, that this is how we're going to show those Muslims a thing or two. The first week of the ban, the animals at the zoo, Mumbai Zoo, the lions and tigers were being fed chicken. Yeah, because the Bajrang Dalis and the VHPs stopped any traffic anywhere. Oh, that's another issue. You see, they're not part of us. I mean, we can't help that. You see, Bajrang Dal is different. RSS is different, VHP is different, that's a fraternal organization, but they're different. And then, of course, everyone on the secular side of the fence says, they're not different, they're all one. Actually, I think they're different. Please understand this reality. Who are these guys? The BJP is the RSS on politics. The VHP is the BJP on steroids. and the Bajrang Dal is the VHP on crack. Right. So let's face it, let's be honest, there are differences. They are different. Right. So then you have, you're feeding the lions and the tigers chicken. The Jidamata Zoo, I think. Then comes the problem. Okay, all the cattle markets over Maharashtra have collapsed. Thousands and thousands of people, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Dalits, are suffering enormously. Every one of them is suffering. Many of them, you see, they did something, a bunch of urban middle-class people with no knowledge of farming, of the countryside. They have no understanding of what the rural economy is and what the role of cattle in the rural economy is. It is a very important role. It is a very important role. Now, in the last week, the Times of India has carried some fantastic stories. I mean, on the collapse of the Kolhapur chappal industry. Make in India, break in India. This is one of your brand names that is famous throughout the world. The Kolhapur chappal industry. It was there long before liberalization, before anything. This was a thriving industry exporting to the world. Okay? Now the beef ban, the cattle slaughter ban, all these things have complete, and the extension to bullocks and bulls, all the extension of that has shattered. Now, who are the main people in the Kolhapur chappal industry? They're not Muslims. They're Dalits. The Muslims are wiped out on the one hand. The Dalits are absolutely crushed on the other hand. Yeah. The OBCs who are pretty much handling, the Marathas and others who are also pretty much handling the cattle markets, they're finished. You have chaos in every front. From a bunch of what? Okay. Now the other thing is that on what's been, to link back to what's been happening here, people are shocked and everyone's been ringing me up and saying, can this really be happening? You bet it is. Let me put it this way. I think the events in JNU and the events elsewhere, they are shocking, they may be repulsive, they may be disgusting. They are not in the least bit surprising. This is who they are. Okay? You have a right to be shocked. You have no right to be surprised. The gigantic political difference between India today and in all decades past is one major difference. There are many, but one germane to our understanding, important for us to understand. For the first time in this country, you have an RSS Pracharak as Prime Minister with a majority. That is the big difference. And you had, the last RSS Pracharak you had was jaded. It had been 40 years before he had been an active Pracharak. Okay? And he had a minority government. And therefore, there were limits on what he could do, and he always whined about coalition dharma and stuff like that. Now you have a Pracharak with a majority. And that allows them to truly express their inner selves. And that's what they're doing, and that is what they will do. Do not be surprised by it. Be shocked by it. Be disgusted by it. Do not be surprised by it. Now, you're living in this country of unbelievable inequality. On every front it grows. Your Niti Aayog guys, your chief economic advisor, don't find that a big problem. They do not think it's a big problem if a third of that pack have written that, the markets have liberated India, and, inequality is a little inequality. A little inequality is good. It helps competitiveness. And we were on a flight together some time ago, and I was telling him that, you can't be a little bit pregnant. So you decide what you want to do, man. Anyway, you have a country today, four of five major sources, tranches of data have emerged in the last 24 months. The follow-up data of census 2011, the data of the socio-economic caste census, which really they have not released the caste data because everyone's terrified of what will happen when they do. It is very flawed, by the way, the caste data. But just let's look at the class data. 75% of rural households in India, and according to the SEC, the rural population is now 884 million as against the census rural population figure of 833 million. According to the SEC, 75% of rural households, 3/4, the main breadwinner earns less than 5,000 rupees. The main breadwinner earns less than 5,000 rupees. If we raise the bar to 10,000, that makes 90% of all rural families, the main breadwinner earns less than 10,000 rupees. Okay? In the country that has $100 billionaires, according to Forbes, which is my favorite website, it's bookmarked first in my computer, and you have your average billionaire is worth $3.5 billion. You rank 4th or 5th in the world of dollar billionaires, according to Forbes. You rank, let's say, 5th. Actually, I believe we are number 2, because the two guys above us, Russia and China, they have larger numbers of billionaires, but their billionaires are worth a paltry 1 or 2 billion apiece. Our billionaires are worth, average net worth is 3.5, 3.7 billion apiece. Our dads are richer than their dads. Yeah. And so the Chinese, have all these pretend billionaires who just made one billion on a stock exchange killing. We have solid citizens of this country who are, they're very solid. And their liquidity is pretty high also. So you have, on the one hand, about $100 billionaires, somewhere between 95 and 100, who account for 12% of your gross domestic product, even notionally. And the same nation that ranks 5th in the dollar billionaires ranks 135th in the Human Development Index of the United Nations. Yeah. Every single Latin American country, including the poorest Bolivia, is above you. The only Caribbean country below you is Haiti. And they've had some bad times, Yeah. Sri Lanka, 20 positions ahead of you, fought a civil war for 30 years and does better than you in the Human Development Index. Yeah. Vietnam, 50-odd positions ahead of you, after having suffered the most barbaric war, from which generations to follow will continue to suffer the effects of Agent Orange and other chemical poisons unleashed on them by US imperialism. Okay? All these countries are ahead of you. None of these countries has dollar billionaires the way you do. Yeah? India has more dollar billionaires, 2.5 times more dollar billionaires than all the Nordic and Scandinavian countries combined. Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Norway, all of them together don't have, barely a third of the number of dollar billionaires you have. And as I said, China may have some more, they aren't, and as for the Russians, I don't take them seriously. Every 5 years, they send all their billionaires to prison. We send ours to parliament. We are a mature democracy. Right. By the way, just to tell you something about the inequality of parliament also, the 2014 election affidavits tell us the self-declared worth of our MPs. 82% of your members of the Lok Sabha are crorepati's by their own declaration. And we know that they are very modest, so you can pull out a figure for yourself. What was the figure 5 years ago? What was the figure 10 years ago? In 2004, the figure was 32% of all MPs were crorepati's. In 2009, 53% of all MPs were crorepati's. And in 2014, 82% of all were crorepati's. These were, in your election affidavit stated figure, you are not required to attach your income tax return. You can state anything you like. You should see the modesty of Mr. Chandrababu Naidu's return. His 2014 return was lower, the amount was lower than 2004. So, I mean, this is selfless living. Because he said that previously the value of the house was calculated at market value, but he was taking accountants were taking the value as purchased at that time, because market values fluctuate. You see, the market does give you choice, right? As for the market giving you choice, and which is what that guy was gabbing about and what all these guys were gabbing about, there are about 1 billion people. FAO has brought that number down by changing definitions to 850 million. But about 1 billion people worldwide are admittedly hungry. 1 billion human beings go to bed hungry every night. If the market gave them a choice, now, if they had a choice, if the 1 billion hungry people had a choice, I suspect they would choose to eat. Since they are unable to do so, I suppose we may argue that they have no choice and that your market does not give you a choice at all. Anyway, the SECC data shows you 75% below 5,000 rupees, the main breadwinner, 90% of households below 10,000. About 8% of households rural households, the main breadwinner takes home more than 10,000 rupees a month, and that would include a substantial number of government, panchayat and other officials and servants. But still, that's how pathetic the figure is. The NSS data for 2013, the National Sample Survey Organization data, tell us the average income of a farm household in India. There are two things you have to know about this number to understand how obnoxious this number is. There are two things you're required to know. One, this is not an individual income figure. It is a household income figure. Household is estimated to be 4.9. Since I've never met the 0.9, I'll round it off at 5. And this household of 5 people, they counted income from farming and income outside of farming, income from all sources, average household income of the Indian farm household, monthly, 6,426 rupees, which is about $97 US at current prices, at current rates. 5 people. And that 6,426 is a average. It's an average of Kerala, Punjab on the one hand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar on the other. So you come between an average of 3,500 and 10,000, 11,000, 9,000, 10,000, you're arriving at the 6,420. That's how bad the rural situation is. Whether you are a farmer, an agricultural laborer, whatever you are, it's bad. That kind of inequality on the one hand. On the other hand, from 1991, when you did not have a single dollar billionaire, to 2015, when Forbes India ran a list of 100 Indian dollar billionaires. Some of them got a little wet recently in the stock exchange shock, so they've come down a bit. But they're entrepreneurs, they take risks. Yeah, this is what I was explaining to your counterpart students in the IIM Bangalore. When I do something called the People's Archive of Rural India. This is such an astonishing place which you're destroying, which has horrible things, some of the most horrible and regressive practices on earth, but some of the most fascinating and brilliant things as well. Both are India. That's your reality. Okay? 833 million people speaking 780 living languages, out of which 6 languages are spoken by more than 50 million people, 3 are spoken by more than 80 million, 1 is spoken by more than 600 million, 1 is spoken by 1 person, JNU in the Andamans, 1 is spoken by 7 Saimar in Tripura. This is an astonishingly diverse society. There is nothing like it. There are people who fear diversity, so they want to impose one language on everybody. Right? And look at you see, even their own culture, which is rich, beautiful, they don't understand it. Hindi is called a language, and the great languages of the north, Bhojpuri, Mithila, Brij Bhasha, Awadhi, these are called dialects. Hindi is not even 200 years old, it's not 150 years old. The great literature of the Hindi heartland, the great literature of the northern heartland is in Awadhi, in Bhojpuri, in Mithili, in Brij Bhasha. These are the ancient languages of the north. Honor them, respect them. But fundamentalists on both sides of the fence, from the time languages began to be reinvented, when all local words were expunged and Urdu was made more Persianized, while all Urdu words and Persian words were expunged from Hindustani to create this thing called Hindi. And that process has kept up for 100 years. In the 60s, when I was a child, there was a joke about All India Radio, Delhi, that All India Radio broadcast in 3 languages that nobody spoke: Queen's English, Persianized Urdu, and Sanskritized Hindi. Fundamentalists fear diversity. They wake up and they're scared to watch those people from Tripura or Nagaland speak a language they don't understand. I wake up, as I hope you do, thinking how rich you are. What was it for me in Ganga Hostel, where I counted 24 languages that we knew between us? What a beautiful world to live in. What an incredible, and that is also part of JNU. I will also make one digression to tell you that I learned from this campus the importance of living for something beyond yourself. I learned that career is not a resume and success is not a spreadsheet. The unselfishness with which my colleagues and comrades in this campus came to my aid each and every time there was trouble, and there was always trouble, is something that has never left me. It shaped me, it made whatever you want, whatever the word is you wish to attach to me, you can. And that's what it did. Fundamentalism fears diversity and tries killing it. Inequality has come to a point where you are able to mobilize and disturb and agitate large numbers of people on completely fraudulent grounds. He took your job, she took your job. There are no jobs. And they haven't created one. They've displaced millions and tens of millions, but they haven't created one job. Now, they haven't created even a single one of any consequence for poor people, except to be my domestic servant or yours in the city. In Mumbai, once the secular heart of the Indian working class, where a cosmopolitan working class which came from all over the country to work in those mills, where are those mills now? They're all real estate. They're all real estate. There is actually a section, a large chunk of real estate called Planet Godrej. And it is a very different planet. There is the new symbol of Mumbai, which has overtaken the gateway of India, Mr. Mukesh Ambani's house around the Pedder Road area, which, if you are proud to be an Indian as I am, we can proudly assert is without rival the ugliest building put up at the highest cost. When I went to Mumbai, the last great newspaper strike that was going on was in the Indian Express, where our colleagues were demanding 200 rupees extra conveyance And of course, Sethji would not hear of it. You know, who the hell do you think you are demanding 200 rupees more? So then we all sat on a strike outside there in sympathy for our colleagues in the Express that they should get that 200 rupees conveyance allowance. Today, all of us who sat on that strike have private cars. The lady who cleaned our place, the Talegaon farmer, she and I came to Mumbai about the same time. Everything that is important in my life became much cheaper. Everything that is important in her life, I call it the buy index, became costly. Computers became cheaper, air conditioners became cheaper, cars became cheaper, bus fares became, when she came, the minimum bus fare was 25 paise. Today, 5 to 8 rupees for the shortest trips. Okay? Everything that was meaningful to us or facilitated our middle class lives, the price went down. For her, it went up. The first computer I bought in 1991 when I was working in Blitz, the entire 2-3 buildings of people came in queues to see it. It was so sexy because it had a 20 megabyte hard disk. And that was the size of the Bombay telephone dictionary, directory. Today, the cell phone that you and I have is about 200, 300 times more powerful than that, probably more. Okay? Everything worked for us. Everything worked for the upper middle classes and the elite. So you've had that kind. On the other hand, a rural India, 833 million people, where in the households 90% do not take home 10,000, the main breadwinner. What sort of inequalities have we created? What astonishing inequalities have you created? Your rank in the global hunger index is a shame. For many years you were behind Rwanda, which apparently was handling food security better. Okay? You have a countryside where, according to the government's figures of National Crime Record Bureau, which is very seriously flawed figures, though the only one best amongst what we do have, says that over 3 lakh farmers have committed suicide since 1995. 10 years from 2001 to 2011, it's 1 every half hour. 1 every half hour. Today, if you read your front page of the Times of India, there's a BJP MLA in Mumbai saying, oh, they're killing themselves, it's a fashion. Yeah. There are others who have, but there are many others who have done this. Naidu said that they're killing themselves to get compensation. Yeah, you know, you can have a real blast after you're dead. Now, you know what? There is a compensation of 1 lakh. First thing you need to know, less than 12% of farmers who have committed suicide have got compensation. Their families, 12%. In Andhra and Maharashtra, it is higher because some of us have been around making noise for 10 years. So a higher percentage gets it. Mr. Naidu said, they're all these fellows, they're killing themselves to get the money. You know what happens when that farmer dies and who gets the money? Out of the 1 lakh, 30,000 is given to the widow in cash, 70,000 is put into an FD. I don't have a problem with that. I don't. I advocated it because if that full amount was given to her in cash, the money lender is waiting as she returns home from the collector's office to grab that cash. So it's better that, but still, just see how pathetic an amount it is. That 70,000 gives that widow a monthly interest of 446 rupees. And that was when the interest rates were higher on FDs. Okay? So that is the kind of situation. All around us is intense misery, intense deprivation. And I keep asking, as I asked in a seminar on the agrarian census yesterday, where is our sense of moral outrage? 300,000 people, but don't count the suicide. Count the tens of millions of others who are in the same situation, who have not taken their lives and live to continue with that misery and fight it. Where is our sense of outrage? I will tell you this interesting thing, that when I look at attitudes to the crisis, in government, academia, media, and general public, the greatest sympathy and empathy I find is in the general public, not in any of the other three sectors. Okay? Even, and I was telling them, compared to academia, it surprised me. It made me think. I spoke at 5 institutions in the last few years of the armed forces, like the Defense Military College, IDSA, School of Air Warfare. It was fascinating to me that the officers of the armed forces were far more disturbed about the agrarian unrest because so many of your soldiers are farmers in uniform. They were at least sensitive to that. I was told that people were really concerned about their enlisted men. They were really worrying about the anxiety and stress that sometimes they could see as people feared a phone call from the village. So it's interesting to me that government, academia, and media have such a different approach to it. In all three, there are fabulous exceptions. And by the way, the fabulous exceptions in academia on agrarian crisis, 90% of them are from JNU. Be proud of it. The first person in this country to term the mess, when I was hesitant to do so, I didn't even understand the term, the first person to term this mess an agrarian crisis and predict an incredibly appalling disaster was Professor Utsa Patnaik of JNU. As a field reporter who spends till last year more than 250 days a year in the countryside, I can say that no other academic's work matched ground reality so closely, explained to me what I was seeing, which I would not have otherwise grasped so deeply. So there are exceptions. There are exceptions in the media. There are the Jaideep Hardikars, the Purushottam Thakurs, the Priyanka Kakotkar, who is actually a trailblazer in the Times of India. The best stories on the agrarian crisis today are coming in the Times of India on the front page. The stories are so good they can't keep them off there, right? But you have the shameless attitudes so dominant in media, academia. Two vice chancellors conducted commissions of inquiry. By the way, there have been 30 commissions of inquiry across the country on farmer suicides. In India, see, good old Indian tradition, you see, our Sanskriti and everything else, the good old Indian tradition of government is you will have as many inquiry commissions on the same subject as necessary until one of them gives you the report you want. So we've had 2 vice chancellors. Veeresh in Karnataka conducted a survey and declared that leading cause of suicide was alcoholism. As I told your colleagues yesterday, the problem with this argument, and by the way, this was immediately supported by 90% of the media, which said, oh yeah, these guys drink like it. The problem with these arguments, suicide is not from one factor. There are multiplicities of factors that go into a suicide. But if excessive alcoholism was the driving factor behind higher numbers of suicides, if excessive drinking was the driver of suicides, damn it, there'd be no journalists left in the world. And very few academics. And no human rights activists at all. Okay. So let's leave that shit out and go on to the next VC. Another VC from Maharashtra was asked to do a study when I was apparently troubling Vilasrao Deshmukh in too much on the farm suicides issues in Vidarbha. So this gentleman did not meet a single farmer. He did not go to make any inquiry in any household. He wrote very little about the farm suicides, except one fabulous paragraph. But he wrote plenty about yours truly, denouncing me for having created an artificial scare, and basically for saying that Maharashtra was the worst state. It is 63,000 suicides, farmer suicides, according to the NCRB since 95. So I woke up to the delightful morning of finding that I was on the front page, first lead of Mumbai Mirror as enemy of the state. Okay, well, it was the state of Maharashtra. My anti-national feelings were limited to a smaller, yeah. The headline said, Sainath defames state. The gentleman, the report firstly, I was okay with it because it was so stupid that nobody took it seriously. And it sort of gave my work in Vidarbha a new profile. Vilasrao was happy with it because he really had to lash out at me, and he felt better when that job was done. The gentleman who wrote the report was really happy because he was rewarded. He went from being Vice Chancellor of Pune University to being a member of the Planning Commission. So everybody got his thing. Okay, that's India too, right? Accommodation. So yeah, I mean, this is the sort of stuff, the kind of work, so-called academic work done on this crisis. In every sector you look at it. Do you know that when you look at the farm households, the highest expenditure today, the highest expenditure is health expenditure. Any household, people are spending twice on health expenditure what they do on education. And India has, of the large countries, perhaps the most privatized health system in the world. You're the bottom 7 in terms. 84% of all expenditure on health is from the pockets of ordinary Indians. And what are they doing with such government hospitals as there are, with such government clinics as they are? They're privatizing those also. Do you know the latest round of privatization has privatized 4,000 Anganwadis? Private management given over to Cairns India, which is the front company of Vedanta. Yeah, does that? I hope that hurts you. 4,000 Anganwadis. Listen, that 0 to 6 age, that is the crucial age in which your nation's future is formed. Yeah? And you're giving it over to a profit-making corporation. Your nation is formed in that 0 to 6 age. What the child eats, what that care the child gets, the water the child drinks. In that age, that child is made. And its health profile, everything is set for life. Okay? It's nutrition, everything. And you're handing that over to a profit-making corporation. 4,000 so far, more on the way. Now, when they're talking about crop insurance, poor things, these farmers, they're killing themselves, let's give them some insurance. They won't kill themselves. No, they'll make a killing for private companies, which are now going to be given the crop insurance, the farm insurance figures. Okay. Indebtedness in the Indian peasantry more than doubled between 91 and 2011. The number of households said to be in debt by the NSS is of almost double what it was in 1991. I don't accept even that figure. They say it went from 26% to 46.8%. The problem with that figure is it means that there are 53% who are not in debt, which is a joke. Just tell it to anyone in the countryside and watch them laugh. And last week, NABARD put out a focus, you know NABARD, right? National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, put out its state focus profile for Maharashtra and declared that 51.3% of all agricultural loans would go to Mumbai and its suburbs. This is not a leaked document. This is a presentation by NABARD. They are telling you that agribusiness is more important than the agriculturist. 51.3%. I can see you're looking shocked. I hope you are. You know, if I'm provoking or disturbing you, that's only because I'm trying to. Okay. Professor R. Ramakumar of the Tata Institute of Social Sciences has tracked the disbursal of rural credit for years. in 2011, 2012, 53% of what is called agricultural credit, now we are not talking about rural credit, we are talking about agricultural credit, was disbursed in Maharashtra, 55% of which is still a rural state. 53% was disbursed in 3 cities, in 3 metros. 38% of agricultural credit was disbursed through rural branches of banks. And who knows who got it in those areas, but that's the kind of profile. So over half of all agricultural credit is being disbursed in Mumbai, in Pune, all those poor, struggling farmers of Malabar Hill and Kaf Parade. Well, they also do a kind of farming. They don't do contract farming, they do farming off contracts. Right. As Ramakumar shows you, the loans below 50,000 have collapsed. Who takes loans below 50,000? The small farmers, the small agriculturists. The loans that have exploded are between 10 and 25 crores. How many small peasants have you met on their way to the bank saying, hey, just hang on while I pick up my 25 crore loan? What? I'm surprised at you. I know 2. One is called Mukesh and the other Anil. The entire resources directed towards agriculture having been halved and thirded and shredded over 2 decades, what remains is being redirected towards the corporate world. In sum, understand this. What we are doing is racing towards the consolidation of a corporate state. But to return to my original premise, you are ruled by an alliance of socio-religious fundamentalists and economic market fundamentalists. This is not a phenomenon restricted to India. The United States, okay, the Vatican of market fundamentalism, the United States, in the most dangerous part of the planet, as it calls it, is entirely dependent on the two most insanely fundamentalist regimes in the world, Saudi Arabia and Israel. These are the 2 nations on whom American policy is predicated. Right? So you see, it's the market fundamentalist, religious fundamentalist alliance is not restricted to this country. It's not something so novel. They really need each other. The latter need the other to beat you guys up, okay, and teach you a thing or two. So, and as for the media, please understand that the media are very, very, very different from what they were even 20, 25 years ago. Yeah. If you look at the, let me put it to you simply, guys. There are only 2 kinds of journalism today. One is journalism. The other is stenography. Corporate stenography. Yep. Earlier I used to say stenography, and then one day one old gentleman in the audience, it had to be Mylapore, Tamil Nadu, stood up and protested. He said, "Sir, will you stop please abusing stenographers?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm a stenographer." I said, "I'm very sorry." He said, "Hold on, I want to say something." I said, "Please, sir, please, you say what you like." He said, he said, "We are much superior to you fellows." A stenographer, I was a court stenographer. We took down everybody's version. Witness, prosecution, accused, defendant, everybody. You only write the word the powerful tell you. You know, stenographers are much more noble in their profession than you are. Ever since that day, I've been using the word corporate stenography. If you look at who owns the media, by the way, the biggest owner in the media today is Mr. Mukesh Ambani. And if you look at who owns the media and the direction it's going, you're seeing a gigantic concentration of power in fewer and fewer hands. And the nature of industry in which earlier you had newspapers which were monopolies, channels which were monopolies, not anymore now. The old media monopoly does not exist. The new media monopoly is a small department in much larger corporate monopolies. Network 18 is the giant network in this country, but it is still a very small part of Reliance Industries. Okay, understand, that's a huge shift, and that has many. Today it's very difficult to tell the difference between fourth estate and real estate. Okay, so in sum, you're in a situation where inequality is galloping, where social religious fundamentalism, please, and also while I'm here for you guys, while I admire you guys, I will always be here for you guys. Please also remember on how many other campuses things are happening. FTII fought for 105 days, 105 days to keep Yudhishthira out of. By the way, do you know the real story of Yudhishthira in the Mahabharata was that he was so noble, so truthful, that his chariot never touched the ground until he told a lie to Dronacharya when he said, Aswatthama is dead. Then his chariot, which was 6 inches above the ground, touched the earth. This Yudhishthira's chariot was never going to get off the ground. It's mired in the mud. You know, a guy with B film, well, never mind. Okay? But then, the case of Rohit Vemula. You know, one of the data pieces that I did not give you from the census, 400 million Indians have never been to a school or college. They haven't been to an inside of an educational institution. That is 1/3 of your population. 3% of rural India, according to the other data, 3% of families have a graduate member. With scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, that is even lower than 3%. Out of this background comes a Rohit Vemula and does his PhD, ranged against an education minister whose qualifications we shall never know. But we know she didn't make it past college. Yeah. By the way, you know, my sense of propagating Sanskrit, I have a formula for it. I think all Miss Irani's serials should be dubbed in Sanskrit and shown only in that language. You know, it's a good way of promoting it, right? Or the harassment and holding hostage of my colleague and friend Siddharth Varadarajan in the Allahabad University. The killing 2 years ago of the Vice Chancellor of Vikramaditya University from a beating from which he died. You guys are not alone. Okay, this is who they are. A fraternity whose ideological forebears murdered the father of the nation want to talk to you about being anti-national. People whose leaders begged for mercy from the British to be released from prison on the condition they would be good boys, they're teaching you about being nationalist. Yeah. So forget, this is the social religious group on the one hand, and the market fundamentalist group, I won't say on the other hand, they're hand in hand. Now, one thing, and I leave you with this, one of the fantastic things, it felt so good in the march yesterday. JNU was always a place of diversity, multiple voices, and should be. But what was fantastic to me in this last week or 2 weeks is the way every one of differing ideologies has risen above themselves to put forward a united front against the nastiest state in the last 30 years. Do not lose that unity. Do not keep your differences. Every one of us is entitled to our positions. But against this social, religious, market fundamentalist alliance, do not let your guard down. Do not let them break your unity. I am proud of you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yes,